Maruchan superfans are everywhere. From the busy moms who want to deliver maximum flavor in a flash to dorm room diners who want to put some slurp in their step. There are a ton of copycats you could use. But if you want to bless your bowl, there's only one true Maruchan. Whether you choose instant lunch, ramen bowls, yakisoba, or restaurant quality gold, Maruchan is the only ramen worth obsessing over. Smiles for all. Maruchan. See what all the ramen hype is about at maruchan.com.
Brooks Running has a new shoe for you runners out there. Did you hear that? Better turn up your volume. In fact, turn it up to the max. Introducing the all-new Ghost Max. It's got all kinds of things to make your knees and ankles feel protected, like Max Cushion, Max Soft Landings with DNA Loft V2 foam, and Max Smooth Rides with their Glide Roll Rocker. Feel better on your run with Ghost Max. Learn more at brooksrunning.com.
Nurses, we just want to thank you for everything you do. We are ShiftKey.com. Log on today and connect to open PRN shifts in your area. Work when you want, where you want. You can even get paid next day. ShiftKey.com. Start today.
This podcast is brought to you by drunkmummysobermummy.com and made in association with HelloSundayMorning.org, changing the world's relationship with alcohol, one Sunday at a time.
Oh, the kettle's boiled.
Great. Perfect timing.
Should we get started then?
I'm Victoria Vanstone.
I'm Lucy Good.
And this is Sober Awkward. Right, Lucy, over to you.
Thanks, Vic. So whatever stage you're at on your sober journey, and Vic and I are at completely different stages, you'll know that life without booze can at times feel, what do you reckon?
Awkward. Lucy and I invite you to listen to our podcast where we discuss the realities of sobriety, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the cringingly embarrassing. Our honest and open chats will help you discover what it really means to be sober.
Yes, we're here like a dodgy bottle of port from your nan's drink cabinet to take the edge off sobriety. And together we can learn how to feel the awkward and do it anyway.
Sometimes my lips get stuck on my teeth. I don't know why, 'cause I can't help it. That's the song I keep singing in my head, Lucy. Don't let Alan leave that in the recording.
Is that because of the face I'm
No, it's just
pulling?
these little dogs on the reels that have their lips stuck in their teeth, and that's the song that goes with it. But
sing it again.
anyway,
Go on, sing it again.
Sometimes my lips get stuck on my teeth.
Thank
Oh,
you
he's
for
given
that.
us the thumbs up, right? We're ready to go.
We're all ready. Okay, now we've just been for brekkie, haven't we? And
Yes.
What were we talking about?
Well, we were talking about grog bog, which is something that I had never heard of before. Let me just... Alan, have you ever heard of grog bog?
Yeah, it's a cocktail, isn't it?
It's a toilet cocktail of some sort, I guess.
That's definitely for Alan.
nah.
That wasn't right. The wrong answer, Alan.
Yeah, there was an article I was reading before me and Lucy came to record the podcast this morning. There was an article I was reading about, in the national newspaper, I may add, about grog bog, which I'd never heard that term before. And apparently it's what you do in the toilet after a night of drinking. And the gentleman involved was asking a doctor what to do about grog bog. Have you heard of grog bog, Lucy?
I have never heard of it. It makes me think back to my drinking days and what my poos were like at the time,
Yeah.
which is a really, I never thought I'd be going through that thought process this morning.
No.
I never noticed that they were particularly different but
No.
maybe they were just always the same because I was always hungover.
Yeah, so you
drinking.
just accepted them. But anyway, it was funny in the article that it wasn't to say that stopping drinking would make grog bog better. It was actually ways to still drink but still not have grog bog, if you know what I mean.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So nowhere in the article did they say maybe drink a little bit less and then you're doing normal poo in the morning.
It was just how to do, not grog bog poos and have a full meal and drink lots of water and all these other ways of getting through the toilet experience the next day. But, it was just weird. The obvious answer from the doctor was stop drinking.
Yeah.
But no, that never came up.
Yeah, but just trying to find other ways around it so you can carry on drinking but not have the side effects
I know.
the next day.
I wish it was a cocktail, though, because that is a good name for a cocktail. Maybe Alan could start a little alcohol-free brand called Grog Brog.
Yeah, I had not heard that. Is grog an Australian term?
Yeah, grog, I think, is an Aussie term, yeah.
So they must use different phrases for that morning after poo in different countries.
I don't know whether we have a name for it in England.
Yeah, if anyone would like to let us know the name for that in your particular country, we'll be fascinated.
I'm sure Viz probably has one. I'll have to look it up. Yeah, my favourite source is not available to me right now, but I can go and look that one up later.
That's some further research for you, Vic, 'cause you like a bit of research, don't you?
I do love a bit of research. The other topic, which we actually had different topics to talk about this morning, but over breakfast we've decided that these are much more relevant. We were talking about the courtesy bus, which is another Aussie thing, which is when you go to the local RSL club or the Bowls Club or any sort of pub,
which is like
actually,
a pub,
a pub or a hotel they call it over here. You get a courtesy bus which comes and picks you up from home and drops you back so you can drink as much as you like, which in my day, I mean, I would have loved a courtesy bus, like, you know, to get rid of that who's drinking, who's driving, all that sort of thing. But here, me and Lucy were talking about this morning in depth, and we were like, God, the courtesy bus is actually just a kind of green light, isn't it? To go, right, you can get as wasted as you want, and someone's there to give you a lift home. Yeah,
and I don't know what it's like in other countries. I mean, Vic and I can only really compare England on Australia, but you do not get courtesy buses in England. And I think it must sound quite weird to people who don't live in Australia that you can actually phone up your local pub, club, bar, and you can tell them where you live and they will send a bus for free to pick you up, and then they will take you home when you've finished in there. And the reason they do this is so that you can have a drink.
Yeah.
That is mad, isn't it?
It's madness. It's like the enabler bus, we could call it.
The enabler bus. Yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about enablers today. But I just can't get my head around it. The more we were talking about it, and you were saying, Vic, weren't you, that there's a big, some sort of bar near to you where there's a kids' play area underneath. And what was it? Parents go along with their kids on the courtesy bus, drop the kids off to the play area where they're looked after, obviously by staff.
Yeah, there's someone there, staff there.
They go up and have something to eat and as many drinks as they like, and then the whole family gets on the courtesy bus and goes home.
Yeah.
Need we say anything else about the madness of that?
I mean, I hate to judge because it's probably things I have done in the past. We're not saying that we are judging those people that do those things, because it was so ingrained in us as well that we probably would have done those things in the past.
I definitely took the courtesy bus.
But now for us, being sober, it seems like madness.
It does.
To get on a bus with your children absolutely hammered. I'm sure I've done it.
Yeah. Oh, God, I've definitely taken the courtesy bus. And the thing about it is that if you use the courtesy bus, you almost feel compelled to drink to the point where you can barely walk, because that's the reason you got the courtesy bus, to allow yourself to get out of control, that you can't make your own way home.
And also they're smart, I guess, the clubs and pubs and those places that it's taking you to, is that you're going to spend more money. It's like it's kind of a selfish thing of them, their financial thing, really, isn't it? That you are going to go and you're going to drink more because you don't have to leave to drive or just have one pint and then go. So actually, they're making more money out of having the courtesy bus.
100%, that's why they do it. But when you look back on it and you think about it a little bit more, it's madness. Another thing I tell you, which is madness, as we're having a bit of a rant here.
Yes, love a good rant.
My daughter has just come back from schoolies.
Yeah.
Now, for anyone who's not in Australia, when you finish high school over here, it is a massive thing. Graduation is huge. And when that's all done and they've actually finished school and graduated, they have a thing called schoolies, which is basically a week-long party.
It's like Freshers' Week for university in England, I think, isn't it, a bit?
It might be, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, these are 17 and 18-year-olds, and they go down to the Gold Coast, they buy their schoolies passes, which means they get their accommodation, and they have massive setups where they have bands and all these things that age group loves. I think they can get cheap passes into the theme parks and things like that. So in many ways, look, it's a brilliant thing. And my daughter came back yesterday. We'll just say she went to sleep at 6:30 yesterday evening. And when I left the house at 7:30, she was still asleep. Exhausted.
Partied out.
But how weird is that when our kids graduate school and they should be getting themselves prepared for the real world, we then put on this massive event for them, which is alcohol fueled. I mean, we hear about all sorts of hideous things happening at schoolies. Teens falling off of balconies in hotels, just drinking too much. It's can be quite a disaster event in many ways.
I wondered during that week how many kids get their stomachs pumped.
Get hospitalised. It would be heaps and heaps of them, because they really are. It's a drinking event. It's a week-long party. Yeah. So what is that saying to your kids as they come out of school and they're moving into adulthood and the responsibility of real life, and they're encouraged to go on an organised week-long party, I feel that my daughter isn't a drinker like me, thank goodness, and she does like a drink, but she certainly doesn't get carried away at all. And while she was away for that week, I thought, God, I hope this sort of 7-day party doesn't turn her into a drinker, because she's drinking every day. She's learning how hair of the dog can make her feel better. It really is utter madness.
But it's also funny, like, we're not supposed to be talking about this now, but it is interesting. Like, the culture is almost forcing us to do that, saying, oh, we have to go through this as teenagers. We kind of thought, they've got to go through this. They've got to learn, and they've got to know how to grow up and how to drink responsibly. But why do they have to go through this? Why can't we just be our authentic selves as a teenager and not put ourselves at risk? I mean, it's different for us now because we've been through it. It's easy for us to say. But I almost want to just grab a teenager and just go, look, don't do this. Yes. Don't do what we did and make the mistakes and put yourself at risk and be promiscuous and take drugs when you're drunk and all of these things that we did. I feel like, oh, please, you don't have to go through this to become a good person. You can just leave the alcohol behind and you will still progress much more quickly through your life with a lot more achievements, probably.
You will. But I mean, your voice would be a simple whisper against the 7-night-long party on the Gold Coast, which it's almost like grooming them to drink and party from an early age.
Also, it's about impressing their peers and about being accepted into their groups. And sometimes when you're a shy teenager like you were, the only way you know how to be able to fit into those situations is to drink, which is what we're talking about today.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And I'll just quickly add a note about schoolies. I do think it's great. My daughter and her boyfriend had a brilliant time. They did lots of the theme parks, and I think it's wonderful that we live in this country where they love to celebrate things, and they do look after these graduating kids in terms of making sure that when they leave school, it's a massive event and they feel they've achieved something. So there's a lot of good things about it. But at the same time, if you look at it from the other angle, you think, God, this is not giving them the right message early on in their lives as to the way that they want to move forward. Anyway, rant over.
Yeah, rant over. Well done. Had to get that out of your system. Yeah, do you feel better now?
I do feel a bit better, yeah.
Excellent. It's quite hot in here again, isn't it?
Oh, God, it is already. I think it's because we're getting a bit worked up, Vic.
I know, getting angry. We're angry at alcohol.
That's what we should have called the podcast.
Yeah, angry at alcohol. Maybe it's kind of like my general demeanour nowadays.
The angry alcoholics.
Yeah. That's about right.
Anyway, what are we talking about today, Vic?
Today we're talking, I think we've got a title, Lucy, How People Can Help or Hinder Sobriety.
Yep, so this episode is all about the people in our lives, the impact they have on our drinking, and most importantly, how people affect our mission to get sober.
We think this is a vital topic since, as humans, we can't help but want the approval of others, like at schoolies. Especially family members, close friends, and even strangers. People we have never, ever met before. I mean, what the fuck is that all about, Lucy? It's the most mental thing in the world that we care what other people think about us so much.
I know, but we do. We were talking about it in the week, weren't we? We were saying something about we're going for a Christmas lunch and you've got a new dress to wear.
Yeah.
And we were saying, well, we're not really trying to impress anyone. Well, apart from total strangers. Yeah. Isn't that mad?
Yeah. I just think, and you can't even read what's in other people's brains. It's just such a bloody waste of time. Anyway, it's because of this need to fit in and to conform to societal norms that questioning, moderating or quitting alcohol can be so damn difficult. And even though we might not always be aware of it, the people we surround ourselves with have a huge influence on the decisions we make around drinking.
Yes, Vic, whether they're encouraging you to have one more for the road, looking at you strangely when you're not drinking tonight, or inconsiderately packing beer into the fridge and downing it in front of you when you're trying to have a night off. All these things make sobriety way harder than it needs to be. And it's often the people closest to us that hold the cards, the ones we live with or spend a lot of time with, husbands, wives, partners, best friends and parents.
Are you surrounded by people who get your drinking problems, or those who want you to forget your drinking problems? Because it's easier for them to brush their own alcohol issues under the carpet before settling in and pouring another red. Both Lucy and I spent years surrounding ourselves with people who allowed us to swill enough alcohol to burn down a whole village. But albeit very slowly, we did see the light and rearranged our lives so that only those who were fully supportive of our sobriety got front row tickets.
By listening to this podcast, we hope to get you thinking about the people in your world and how they affect your drinking. By telling some of our drinking stories, we hope you will understand that even those who genuinely love and care for you might not be supportive of your sobriety and why this might be. We'll suggest ways to talk to people who are perhaps unknowingly polluting your sober path, ideally without pissing them off and losing all your friends. Finally, we'll reassure you that choosing the right people to share your precious life with can make the difference between the sobriety struggle and the easier, happier, stress-free sobriety that Vic and I have discovered.
Well, not totally stress-free, but it's better.
Yeah.
We still have our ups and downs a little bit.
Can I just say you're sounding very Australian today?
Am I?
Yeah, yeah.
It must be
just
that.
say better.
Yeah, better. I
Better.
feel much better, mate. Is that better?
You've got an Aussie twang going on
I
there.
don't know what's going on there. It's bizarre.
It's your kids.
Yeah.
They've got the Aussie
Bad
accent
influence
and
on me.
it's turning you into an Aussie.
Firstly, let's talk about why, as big drinkers, Lucy, we built a network of people around us who also like to drink. There's a quote I read this week: problems arise when people try to impress others. So true. I mean, what good ever comes of it? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the right thing to do. It's not the right way to be behaving. So
No.
it's not going to bring anything good into your
No,
world.
it's not, is it?
Yet we are always trying to impress
we
other
always do it.
people. I mean, when you
It's
get up in the
bullshit.
morning and you get dressed, you're putting on clothes really to impress other people around you.
I mean,
Strangers.
did you put that outfit on to
Well, I
impress
put it on
me?
especially
It's
for
not
you.
working. I am unimpressed.
Well, I was going to put some makeup on, but I was running out of time. I thought, oh, it's only Vic.
Yeah. So I am one of the people you don't need to impress. That's all right then. It's so true. It reflects my own past behaviours, that quote. Problems certainly did arise because I was too busy trying to keep up with the character that I'd created. I just wanted to go through some examples very quickly, Lucy, of the sort of people I surrounded myself with when I was a drinker. And one of the things when I thought about it, the first one that popped into my head was a guy I met in Bangkok who I wondered what he was doing. He had a little like a dropper, like an eye dropper. I thought he had sore eyes, but I realised he was dropping acid into his eyeballs.
Did you think that was the coolest thing
I
in
thought,
the
oh
world
my
and
God,
wanted
this
to be his
guy-
best friend?
Yeah, I thought, oh, that's cool. Like, that's the sort of person I want to hang out with, someone who's dropping acid droplets into their eyeballs.
The more outrageous, the more we wanted to hang out with them.
Yeah, so it was people like that, bar owners, coke dealers, DJs, bouncers, general lost-its. The guy, one of the guys, this is the sort of level I got to, Lucy. I used to hang out with people who asked my friend for fellatio, I'll say the word fellatio, in return for a gram of speed. I mean, that's the sort of person that I was hanging out with. And we were like, we sort of laughed it off. She didn't do it.
I was going to say, did she?
No, she didn't do it. I think I actually
Did
caught
she
her
not
in a bar.
ask for 2 grams?
Well, yeah.
Bit of bargaining.
That's a different thing than fellatio, the 2 grams. Yeah. And in the end, actually, the people I was hanging out with ended up being people at a courtroom because I got done for drink driving, and that's the level I got to. They were the people that were surrounding me one day. And I'll very quickly tell you the story of my drink driving event. It was one of the lowest points, of course.
Yes.
Not that low because I didn't stop drinking.
Yeah.
But I was in a courtroom and there was a guy, I was outside the courtroom where you meet your duty solicitor, and I was sitting opposite this guy who was talking to this solicitor who was asking him questions, and the guy leant over to ask the solicitor a question and did a massive fart. And I just thought it was the most disrespectful thing. I said, I am never doing a crime ever again because I don't want to be amongst people who fart in front of solicitors.
So let me get this right.
It was a smelly
up in
crime.
court on the charge of drink driving, and that hasn't actually put you off or made you realise that you're sort of really not going on the right path here in your life until this guy farts in front of you, and it's kind of like that's it.
That's it, yeah.
I am never going to break the law again due
He
to
wasn't
that.
standing up in front of the judge and saying guilty.
It was that far.
It was the man. It was the people I surrounded myself. I was like, oh my God, what have I become? I'm amongst the criminals,
the farters.
the farters.
Was he an old man?
No, he was a young guy. I just thought, God, this lovely duty solicitor has come to help him and support his case, and he's let rip in front of him.
Did he do it on purpose, do you think?
I don't know. I just thought, oh, never again shall I commit a smelly crime.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that happened, and you have chosen to take the non-criminal
pathway. But that's the trajectory of my people I surrounded myself with. It starts off with the hanging around with people who I think are a laugh, to people that I'm actually in a courtroom with. I mean, that's a kind of quick descent, isn't it? Really?
It is a massive descent of the wrong kind.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, we're talking about why we build a network of people around us who also like to drink, but we've gone off a little bit on the kind of people we surround ourselves with, and I'd like to bring the word into the conversation, which we've already brought up once already, but enablers.
Yeah.
So those people that you're talking about, the guy with the eyedropper, the people in the court, I find that the people I would surround myself with when I was drinking, a lot of the times I would call them my friends. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I would go out with them for a period of time, so I would call them my partners or my boyfriends, although I'm a bit old for the word boyfriend, I think. But really, looking back at it, they weren't those things. They were my enablers. They were people that allowed me to drink more. They liked me drinking. And I'd go so far as to say some of the people who I've thought of as my closest friends, people I've had the longest relationships with, and people I've believed I'm in love with have been enablers.
Yeah.
And I'm not putting those people down, because that works two-way in an enabler relationship.
Yeah, and you're all in the same boat. You're all fighting this human condition, which is to drink, to be taught to drink. So you're all fighting the same battle. It's just whether or not who comes out of the fight.
Yes, that's right. And you're drawn. Like is drawn to like. So you want to be with somebody who is allowing you to carry on with this ridiculous drinking.
Yeah.
And those people are enabling it. So be it somebody, an enabler could be somebody, you're in a bar and you just bump into someone who's drinking really heavily like you are, and so suddenly you and that person are best friends for the night. That's an enabler that you've just made. It's not a mate.
Yeah, it's not a mate, but it's someone who is allowing you to behave in the only way you know how.
Yes.
And therefore you don't get any backlash from it, because it's suddenly, right, we are similar. You're finding something within someone in that short-lived moment. You find a connection, which is to drink together. Yeah. And then you're happy to find out what happens from that point. And therefore you might bond and you might feel like you've made a friend. But in fact, the only thing you have in common is you're probably alcoholics.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it can be that person in a bar, or I would go so far as to say on some level, my ex-husband was my enabler, and I was also his, because we were both very, very big drinkers, big partiers. So I was never going to end up marrying someone who didn't drink.
Me neither.
It was going to make me feel really awful all the time. So yeah, enablers is something we talk about quite a lot, but that is the people that we surround ourselves with.
And also we surrounded ourselves with people that we thought were not boring. Like I sort of honed them out in those situations. Like I wanted to be with the people that were, had the bottles of wine, empty bottles of wine on the table. I could go into a bar and scan the room and see what group I wanted to join. It was the ones that were laughing the loudest with the empty bottles on the table that were sort of wobbly.
Yeah.
They'd be like, right, they're my kind of people. They're not going to pull me out of the crowd and say I've got a drink problem, so therefore I'm going to get into that.
Yeah, but often it's the ones who are laughing the loudest. Doesn't necessarily mean they're having the best time, does it? They're probably just laughing over ridiculous things. I can remember...
Like dogs getting their lips stuck in their teeth.
But at least we remember the ridiculous things we laugh about.
Yeah.
When I was first going through, oh my God, am I drinking too much? My drinking isn't right. I was living in Byron Bay I wasn't married to him then, but with my ex-husband, so a very, very long time ago. And we had a party and loads of people came around our house, and I made a complete tit of myself in a number of ways. And I woke up the next morning feeling really unhappy. And like I said, from the first, my first signs of like things aren't right here with my drinking. And I do remember mentioning it to my now ex-husband and saying, in some words, I don't feel happy. I feel like I made a fool of myself and I feel uncomfortable. And he said to me, I always knew where you were last night because I just had to listen to where the loudest laughter was coming from. He said to me that wherever I went, everyone was laughing and happy. So that turned my worries into, that's a good thing. That's quite cool that everywhere I was, people were happy. I was making people laugh. And so that was just one of those moments where, yes, of course, he was only doing it to make me feel better. And he genuinely meant it. Yeah. But I was trying to voice my unhappiness and my need for help.
They were probably laughing because you were rolling around on the floor like
exactly.
a dead bird.
Yeah, I think I was probably entertaining them.
Yeah.
But he immediately switched it from, you were the...
making it okay. Yeah. And that's enabling it.
Yeah, and I thought of that because you mentioned the loud laughter. And so loud laughter is not necessarily people having a genuinely good time.
No. And often, actually, I mean, there's some things that make me laugh out loud, but I reckon that drinking laughter is different, isn't it? Because it is more raucous and it's more like, there's more passion behind it.
Yeah, did you used to find that when you when you were drunk, like you might say something funny and everyone laughs at it and you thought, that was great, I made everyone laugh. So you say it again even louder and you just keep saying it louder and louder and everyone carries on laughing.
Because everyone's just as drunk, so they don't really care what you're saying anymore. But it's just
you're just repeating yourself.
I don't know what that's all about. So, yeah, I liked people that were like me. I liked creating havoc and always had stories to tell. And being around other drinkers really hid my issues. That's what it is. It's a barrier. It's a wall, isn't it? The people we surround ourselves are that safety net, that border of safety that no one can penetrate. And we're all in this together. Yes. And let's not anybody get out of this little castle that we built for ourselves, because that's the safe place to be.
I don't have to address my drinking all the while I'm surrounded by people who are drinking the same, if not more than me.
Yeah.
And another a reason why we surrounded ourselves with other people who drank a lot was, for me, I lost interest in everything else in life other than drinking. Someone said, like, do you want to come out kart racing, or do you want to go for a walk in the bush, or
Morris dancing,
whatever? I would just say no if it didn't involve alcohol. I could do it as long as there was a promise of alcohol at the end.
Yeah.
But I'd lost my interest in anything but drinking. And so for me, that was all I had left. So all of my friends had to be big drinkers.
And for you and I, we talk about identity quite a lot, don't we? That was your identity and it was mine. It was so deeply ingrained within us that we didn't know we were allowed to be who we truly are, which is what we are now. So it's like we're not allowed to investigate further beyond the booze, because that's where the line is drawn. That's where it stops, is because it's so ingrained in us. It's what we've grown up with. It's how we have fun. It's all of these things. So why would we bother looking outside of the box and see what the truth is when we're happy in this friendly bubble with all our mates?
And we didn't know what was outside of that box until we tried it.
Yeah, I had no idea.
We were very surprised at what sobriety actually was. But look, our listeners already know that in their heart of hearts, which people in their worlds are not conducive to their mission to stop or moderate drinking. However, for us, it took a long time to see the signs, because we didn't want to see them, did we, Vic?
No.
So to make the process easier for you, our listeners, here are some red flags that you should look out for, that the people in your world are not helping your drinking.
Yeah, what were yours, Lucy?
Well, I think a really obvious one is if you're out and you say to someone, I'm not drinking, if they ask you why.
If they recoil in horror.
Yes. And like do the crucifix sign with their fingers.
And make a hissing sound like you're a vampire. And throw some garlic cloves at your face.
If they need any kind of answer to that question and you have to give them an explanation, then that's just a massive red flag. You should be okay to say, hey, I'm just not drinking tonight. You don't have to give a reason. Now, again, when I was a big drinker, I would be the one with the crucifix and the garlic and everything. Yeah. So again, no judgment here if you're still in that stage.
We're very hypocritical, me and Lucy. We admit to it.
Massively.
We have been these people, so we are sorry about that. But
I was awful. And also, if people make fun of you for not drinking, and often that is a passive aggressive thing. I can remember telling one of my friends that I'd stopped drinking, and he said, well, you won't be much fun to go out with anymore. Ha ha ha. Now, that was a really unusual response because most of them were really positive.
On Florida's Space Coast, we think you can have the best of both worlds. Kind of like right now. Driving, at your desk, maybe at the gym, but you're also grooving to some music. Visit us and you'll go to the beach and see a rocket launch. Or go kayaking and manatee spotting. It's all waiting for you on the only beach that doubles as a launch pad. Plan your adventure today at visitspacecoast.com.
People who make the decision hard for you by carrying on drinking in front of you, and that's something we'll get to later on about when you're living with someone who's a big drinker. If you've told somebody that you're struggling with your drinking and they carry on drinking in front of you, that's not somebody who's there to support you. Perhaps they don't want to see you. Unless there is drink involved, that's a red flag. And that's going back and sort of switching it around on what we were just saying. Like, I didn't want to go out and see anyone unless we were having a drink. So I was that person. But if drink has to be involved, then, that's a red flag that person you're hanging out with is probably not really deep down on the same level as you. If you don't have very much in common with someone other than drinking, just strip it back, take the drinking away and then think, what have we got in common, me and this person? Often people will also express that they feel let down or disappointed that you're not drinking. And that puts a lot of pressure when you've already finding it really hard to step up and say, hey, I'm not drinking tonight. And then you've also let down and disappointed the friend that you're going out with. That makes it exceptionally hard not to drink. And they know that most of the time.
I think that's why I drank a lot of the time, was because I didn't want, it was more like it was almost like an unselfish thing, was to me to drink so that everybody else felt comfortable. I'm just realising that now while you're talking. Like, I drank because I didn't want to make people feel uncomfortable if I didn't, because I wanted them to think I was on the same vibe as them so that they could all relax and have a good time. So sometimes, even though I didn't want to drink when I went out, if I was hungover or anything, I drank because I didn't want to let people down.
I mean, I can remember plenty of times that I would go out and I'd had a massive night the night before, but I was perhaps going out for a girls' lunch or something the following day, for example, at midday, and the last thing I wanted to do was go, and the last thing I wanted to do was drink. But I would sit there and force that drink down me because I didn't want to let the people I was with down. Yeah. Because we'd arranged a boozy lunch. So, that's a red flag. And a particular red flag that comes out to me as well with one of my enablers, a guy that I kind of went out with for a few months, and we got on really well. Lovely guy. I can remember we had a massive session of drinking at mine, and the following morning he went out onto my balcony at about 11 o'clock in the morning to smoke a joint. Yeah. Now, I don't smoke weed, never have. Absolutely delighted that I don't like it. It's the only thing I don't like. Yeah. I'm so pleased. There's one thing I don't like doing, and that's weed. But I remember watching him out there, and there was a bottle of red wine on the side, and I thought, bugger it, I'm going to have a drink if he's having a joint. Yeah. So 11 o'clock in the morning, I pour myself a red wine, and I'm sort of steeling myself for him to turn around and look at me to see what his reaction will be. Yeah. And he did. He turned around, looked at me, and I held up the glass. Yeah, cheers. As if to say cheers. And he went, no judgment here. Well, I kind of fell in love at that moment. I was like, I honestly thought, what a great guy. What a non-judgmental guy he is. I feel so comfortable with this man because he's not judging me. And yet, what was he actually doing? It was not the right thing to be doing toxic to a friend. Yeah. I mean, and the other way, I mean, I should have said to him, why the fuck are you smoking a joint at 11 in the morning? That is not the right thing to do.
This is like him saying, let's do this. Like, I allow you to do that. You allow me to do this.
Enabling the situation. And
carte
to be
blanche,
fair,
it's called, isn't it?
Well, it is. Yes, that's right. It's a very posh word around it.
Carte
very
blanche.
70s word,
yeah, it is
isn't
very
it?
70s, yeah. I might have a baby sham.
Yes.
With my carte blanche. And grog bog.
And grog bog, yeah. I'll have a cocktail, a grog bog, please. But yeah, I think, God, what were we doing to each other? We were actually destroying each other at that time. He didn't realise, because I never told him how upset and how I was struggling so much with alcohol. So I can't blame him.
No, it's not.
And I was
his
doing
fault.
the same back. But somebody to say there's no judgment here, it was like the most amazing feeling. Yeah, I can do this and I'm not being judged. This is wonderful.
This is amazing, yeah. Well, I'm judging. I'm here to judge you now.
Yes, I get judged on everything, don't I?
Yeah. I think for me, the people that when I realised that people weren't cool about me not drinking was when I started to not get invited to things. That's kind of a strong sign that people are finding it hard, isn't it? Because they don't want you there, because they don't want the bloody party pooper there while they're getting stuck in. I mean, it's as simple as that. Why would you want someone there,
who can
a boring
remember
sober
it?
person, who can remember your behaviour, who can, it's too confronting for people. I remember telling people once, and the way I describe their reaction, it's like that recoiling in horror, is people do a disgusted pig face sometimes when I tell them I'm sober. It's like I am disgusted with you. Like their nose turns up and their face screws up, and then people just think it's absolutely disgusting. I mean, and also when you say you're sober, of course, people think you're a real alcoholic, which isn't the case at all. I mean, we've talked about this before, but what is a real alcoholic? I mean, there's such a grand scale for these things, isn't there? And also, when people started telling me I was boring or a fun spoiler, I remember one time being out when I was still a drinker and somebody said to me, "Oh, stop being a goody two-shoes," because I'd only had one glass of wine or something. And I remember him saying it to me and literally grabbing hold of a shot and necking it in front of him to say, "Look, don't you dare call me a goody two-shoes. This is who I am. I am the drinker. I am the punk in this situation. I am definitely not." And it was the most offensive thing that anyone could say to me, goody two-shoes. Whereas now, I like being a goody two-shoes. Like, for once, it's nice to be that person.
That's a little bit about growing up as well, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a bit of an English term, that one, but being called that was my biggest fear.
I mean, it's not exactly the most derogatory thing to be called, is it? A goody two-shoes. Yeah.
So highly offended by those words. It's
have they stuck with you forever?
Goody two-shoes. It's such a weird term, isn't it?
He was a real meaner.
Yeah. What a bastard. Called me everything else, but goody two-shoes was the one that I had a problem with. So I feel like a dick now saying that. Anyway, it is a children's story.
The story is the fact that you had to have a knockback to prove to him that you weren't this thing that he called you.
Exactly.
Madness,
I just wanted to prove that I wasn't that. I was just going to say very quickly, I did look up the word goody two-shoes because I like that word. Or not. And it is derived from a children's story published in 1765. And it was a story of goody two-shoes as a descriptor for an excessively virtuous person or do-gooder. A poverty-stricken orphan girl gets new shoes from a charitable gentleman.
I can see why you were so very offended.
How dare you charitable gentleman, call me that. Oh dear. We might have to take that bit out.
No, we've got to leave it in. It's my little nickname for you now, goody two-shoes.
Fuck you, goody two-shoes. Oh dear.
Look, okay, let's move on after the goody two-shoes episode. What are some of the reasons that people choose not to support your sobriety?
I think my first one, Lucy, here is generally people don't support your sobriety because they can be twats.
Yeah,
the
I agree
Doors
with
song
you.
comes into my mind there. People are strange.
Yes.
People are very strange
I thought
sometimes.
we were going to sing it together then.
People are strange when you're a stranger.
Faces look ugly when you're alone.
Yeah.
From the Lost Boys, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, perfect example. Lost, where everybody's lost.
Yeah,
It's just whether they
we were the
choose to
lost
respect
girls, lost middle-aged women at one point.
Yeah. And people can be selfish and they want a drinking buddy, exactly what we've said. And it's too confronting because it means they have to look in the mirror and confront their own drinking issues.
Yes, and just to say there as well, Vic, it is something that they're not comfortable with and they have to confront their own issues. And they might be thinking about doing that, but if you stop drinking and you tell them, you force that change upon them before they're ready for it.
Absolutely, that's a good point.
I mean, we have talked about being ready for sobriety, and I think we talked about it with Sober Dave quite a lot.
Yeah, the timing of it.
Yeah, the timing and how you can reach so many horrendous rock bottoms, but you still don't stop drinking. But then all of a sudden you just get to the point where you've had it, you're done drinking. And it has to be the right time for you to do it. And if somebody else sort of confronts you with their decision to stop drinking. It makes you confront yourself, and you're not ready for that.
No.
The timing isn't right for you. So it can be very difficult, even though they want to be supportive. They simply can't be, because you're making their life harder and then making them question themselves more.
And it would be a defence mechanism. I mean, if anyone had said to me when I was drinking, you need to quit, or you need to slow down, or you need to stop, I would have really pushed back on that heavily. I would have been like, I haven't got a problem. Because I just didn't want somebody else. It's that acceptance thing again. It's like someone calling you out. And I just would have pushed that back, and it probably would have made me drink even more, actually.
And it's not even somebody saying to you, you need to stop. It's somebody saying, hey, look, I've decided to stop. It's really confronting for the other person, listening to the fact that you've actually made that decision for yourself. They sort of feel, shit, well, should I be doing that? I mean, I know when people have told me they're not drinking, or they're slowing down, or they've stopped in the past while I was still drinking, it always brought it back onto me.
Yeah.
Even though they never did it. They never said, and you should stop. Yeah. No one needed to say it. It was just like, I'm the one who should have made that decision. I know it.
Yeah, that's so true. And also, people don't like it when, we've talked about the vibe thing, but people don't like it when you're not on the same level as them. So, for example, I used to sleep around a lot, and I would always have a good story the next day, and people would be disappointed that I hadn't slept with a Barry Gibb lookalike the night before, because I always had a good story. I always had a weird story, like some weird guy that I'd gone off with, and I'd come the next day, sit in the pub, and everyone would sit rolling around laughing because of the awful antics I'd been into. So they're not going to support my sobriety, because it means they're not going to get those stories in the end.
They're not getting the entertainment from you that they used to. I mean, I still get very entertained by you.
Okay, good. That's all right then.
But then it's really, really easy to entertain me nowadays.
Oh. What are you trying to say?
One of the reasons that people choose not to support your sobriety is because you're less likely to sleep with them.
Basically, that is so true.
That's it.
I am very less likely to sleep with anybody, including my husband.
I know. I'm quite fascinated by this sober sex thing. I'm yet to even go there.
Yeah, we haven't been there yet. No.
Yeah. So but yeah, I mean, my enablers, the people that I went out with, they used to always bring a bottle of wine when they came to see me, because they knew that unless I had a bottle of wine in me, I probably wouldn't sleep with them, and that was a fact. I was more likely to do it, and it was a weird thing. It was a real head fuck as well, because I don't know, I was drinking, and in my heart of hearts, it was making me feel worse. And feeling,
God, it's like you're giving in each glass, isn't it?
Yeah, and then you need that loving from someone to tell you that you're okay.
Oh, slippery slope.
Then you end up sleeping with this person who you wouldn't have slept with before you had the bottle of wine, but because you're feeling so awful, and all your inhibitions have gone, and your sense of what's right and wrong, you do sleep with them, but you haven't slept with them for the right reasons.
It's not the right reasons at all. It can get you into very messy relationships, which we are going to talk about a bit later. Also, drunk people are very easy to blame. I mean, that's why people don't like, when you give up drinking, is because they don't have anyone to blame for their own behaviour. It's not so much also about giving up. It's like you don't have someone there to say, this is your fault. Like, this is why we went out last night and you were the ones that got the shots in. That person's gone. Yeah. So all of a sudden they're confronted with themselves again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And I mean, you talked about how you always felt that you had to entertain people when you went out because they liked the drunk version of you more than the sober version. But taking that a step further, did you like the drunk version of you more as well?
Honestly, I abandoned myself in those situations. So I don't even know who the drunk version of me was. I guessed from people's reactions that it was funny. But I lost, my soul wasn't in me when I was drinking. It was just pounding the drinks until the point I was in a blackout, end of story. So I never got to know myself. We say we're confronted, but I was never confronted with myself because I drank through the confrontation.
But the end result was that people were entertained by you, they laughed at you, they liked you. So you took from that,
yes,
I'm a really good drunk, people like me when I'm drunk, so therefore I have to keep drinking to hold on to all my mates and to keep entertaining them all.
Yeah, so drinking was basically... it was how I built my personality.
Yeah, me too. And I can remember going out, meeting up with people and sitting there with the first drink and not really feeling revved up and not entertaining or talking or saying the things that I would say when I'd had a drink. As soon as I'd had a couple of drinks in me, I was I felt I was a better, nicer, funnier, more social person.
I wish we could watch a video of ourselves now, like that descent, like literally just a camera on your face with that first glass of wine, with you sitting there looking a little bit shy and going like, kind of, I feel a bit uncomfortable. And then I would like to watch just that, an hour of 5 glasses of wine and see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if I would want to watch that.
It'd just be fascinating, though, wouldn't it? Of anyone, just to see how they just change in that process.
We should just go out for a night, Saturday night, and we can watch people do it all night long, can't we?
Yeah. Yeah, scary.
Okay, so let's talk about friends and how to manage your friendship circle around getting sober, because it can be tricky, can't it? Can you give us some tips here, Vic, as you had more friends than me at the start?
Well, it's very funny for me because my husband was never really a huge drinker. He was we drank a lot when we first met, but he was really the reason I was able to give up drinking, because he loved me for me. He loved the person I was, not the entertainer, the drinker. He didn't have that need to laugh from me all the time. He didn't have that expectation. Expectation is a really horrible word because expectation always ends in disappointment. But he didn't have any expectations of me. He loved the person that I was, the person I didn't know, which was really interesting to me. I was like, gosh,
how lovely.
Yeah, really lovely. And that completely changed me as a person because actually I didn't have to act out anymore. So I was really, really lucky that I met someone, and that was really how I was capable of giving up drinking, was that somebody loved me for me.
He was a crucial part, really, wasn't he?
He was a crucial part. I don't think I would have done it if I'd been married to a person that was a heavy drinker.
And there you have it. That's the power of people in your world around drinking.
And also I moved when I was questioning my drinking. I hadn't stopped, but I lived in Sydney when I was still quite, I'd had kids already, and I was still drinking quite heavily, binge drinking. And then I moved and I met a group of people who didn't drink that much. And that was really a shock for me. So all of a sudden I had this husband who wasn't expecting me to drink, and I had this group of friends who weren't expecting me to drink.
Yes.
So I didn't really need to drink. So it forced me into questioning even more, like why am I like this, and why do I feel the need in groups of people to be that person? When in fact I realised I didn't have to be anymore, and that led to me questioning my drinking even more, which led to me becoming sober eventually.
I'll just point out here that those two things are massive, aren't they?
Huge.
You met the guy that you married who wasn't a big drinker, and you moved across Australia a really long way.
And they're quite drastic things,
They are
aren't they?
massively drastic things, and I think that's the point we're trying to make here.
Yeah.
You might have to make drastic changes with the people in your world if you want to really seriously give up drinking.
Yeah. I didn't know those changes were happening, actually. They weren't decisions I made because of drinking. They were organic things that happened that forced me into addressing my drinking. They were natural progressions. Whereas, in fact, sometimes, if I had been questioning before, I totally agree with you. It's good. But sometimes things will happen naturally that will force you into thinking about your drinking as well, which is great.
Do you think if you stayed in Sydney, you would still be drinking?
A good question. I don't think so. I think like all party girls, I think the train has to stop somewhere, doesn't it? It has to crash.
Yeah.
It can't go on like that. I'd be dead by now.
It might have gone on a bit longer, though.
It might have gone on longer, for sure. Yeah, it definitely would have gone longer. I had to change the chapter then when I moved. It was like a new start, and I was capable of readdressing everything. Those new starts, you don't have to move location. You don't have to move house. You don't even have to change your friends.
You don't have to marry a nice guy.
You don't. Well, it'd be better if you did. He's available for rent, my husband. $50 an hour. Directly to my bank account. But yeah, those chapter changes don't have to be as drastic as what Lucy and I are talking about. It can be literally deciding to reach out for help. So I would have found it much harder. I think decisions like this, giving up drinking or questioning your drinking, would possibly be much harder in your 20s than in your 40s, because you're surrounded by people again. Like, I was lucky by my 40s, I wasn't surrounded by all of these people. But in my 20s, I could have never have looked out of that box. And I think it would be a lot harder for people at that age.
Yes, and that's where we want to focus a bit more on those younger people, don't we? And helping them to question their behaviour earlier on, so they don't have to go through what we've been through. I've sort of put here, one of the things to do is test out your friends.
Yeah, good idea.
Sometimes it's a really good way to work out which are your really close friends. So see how they sort of handle your sobriety. So if you tell them that you're giving up drinking and step out of the picture for a bit and see what happens, you might never hear from them again.
Yeah.
that's probably for the best.
That's a good sign.
If you telling them that you're trying to get sober is enough to make them run for the hills, and they weren't really a very good friend. However, what they might do, and what's happened to us mostly, is they might reach out and offer you support.
Yeah, which is fantastic.
And also breathe a sigh of relief that finally you've made the decision to get sober, and they can actually go out with you without you making a complete fool of yourself and ruining the night.
Yeah, and pissing yourself and
or whatever
falling
it is,
or falling in front of a car like you did.
Yeah, rolling over in front of a car. Did land on my hands and knees.
Yeah, like the cat.
And then doing a what's it called? A grog bog in the morning. Because, I mean, what
it's so
friend
revolting,
wants to put up with that?
Sorry, people that are listening to this on their beautiful morning run on the beach, and we're talking about grog bog.
Oh, we were fascinated by that, weren't we, though?
I just want to mention very quickly here, with friends, it's very different to family. With friends, you can end a friendship. But with families, it's much, much harder. If people are drinking around you, like my family are all big drinkers, always have been. They've slowed down a bit recently, I think, when they see what I do, and I think it has made them address it a bit. But you can't choose your family. So sometimes you might have to just accept that people are the way they are and they're never going to change, which can be very, very difficult. And I think that's when you have to adapt your sobriety slightly and know when to leave. Instead of trying to stay around these people when they're drinking, just know what your limits are and say, right, everybody's getting on it. It's time for me to go home, because that is really, really triggering. And sometimes people aren't going to change, and you just sometimes have to accept that.
So it is a bit different, isn't it, dealing with your friends to dealing with your family? And that's what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about what to do if a close family member who lives in the same home as you is still drinking, how best to manage that.
Yeah, that is a very, very difficult one that we get a lot of emails about, don't we? Mm-hmm. A lot of people contact us to say that their husbands are still drinking and how do they stop? I think one of the best things to do is to mention how drinking in the past how drinking is affecting you. So if you have a close family member who is still drinking, like, tell them how you're feeling about it. For me, I got myself in a lot of fucked up relationships because of alcohol. I fell in love with people that I met in bars and things like that. I've termed it, Lucy, you're going to be pleased to hear. I'm calling it TPTL, which stands for too pissed to leave. And I think that's a very, very common thing. Yeah, I was drinking in a relationship I was unhappy with, and I got too drunk to leave.
Well, you haven't got the clarity when you're drinking all the time to recognise that you're on a bad run.
And sometimes you know you're on a bad run, and you know that the relationship you're in isn't working, so therefore you drink more.
Well, and you're depressed as well, and you're drinking more, and that's depressing you even more.
So you end up being with people who you don't suit and don't suit you. And again, enablers, like you said. It actually led me at one point in my life, Lucy, I haven't talked about this before, but when I was living in Thailand, I met a guy who seemed very, very charismatic and very kind, and I was drinking a lot of the time and just sort of ended up being in a relationship with someone who, if I'd been sober, I never would have even considered. And that relationship was very toxic. It was a very slow manipulation of my kind heart, because I had never been around somebody who was so manipulative. I just thought their behaviour was a bit strange and a bit odd. I never stopped to consider that actually they were, a psychopath, basically, at the end of the day.
God.
I know. And it's funny, these situations you can get yourself in because of drinking. And that relationship ended up with me on the side of a road with a black eye. He became violent towards me. But because the relationship was failing so massively, I was drinking away to numb it out, because I felt like I couldn't get out of it. It was one of those classic domestic violence situations, I guess, where you feel so low that you can't break free from it. So that's like, as far as it goes down, both those things, Lucy, didn't stop me drinking, I have to say.
Yeah.
The prison fart.
The court fart
and the abusive boyfriend,
and that's a really shocking story, Vic, because honestly, I'm sure that we know, unfortunately, you're not the only one who gets into situations like that. And do you feel that he, in a sense, he quite liked you drinking? He probably felt that he by allowing you to drink a lot, it was making you more vulnerable.
Probably. And also I think he kind of, I don't know, it's just one of those sort of people that like to be a hater. So it was just another excuse to be horrible to me. So you drank too much last night, or you were this, or you were that. It was like, it gave him the tools to be even more horrible to me. But I was very naive, as I said. I was, a girl who always trusted people and always thought everybody was really kind in their hearts. And that made me very, very vulnerable. I'm not like that so much anymore. And I must say that situation was shit. And I was traumatized by it for a few years. But if I hadn't been through that, I would never have appreciated the man that I'm married to now. So that gave me an understanding of the rights and wrongs in a relationship and go, right, I never want to do that again. I'm not going to drink throughout a relationship because I'm unhappy. I'm not going to accept someone. I'm actually realised now that that wasn't my fault. It was him. He was mad and it was alcohol. It was all messy. And that's what I do not want ever again.
Yeah, you should never have to drink to be with someone.
No. And it does make you reassess when you get out of those situations actually what you want.
Just a little resource I've thought of for people. The Girl on the Train. Have you read it? Watched it on TV?
Yeah.
Really, really good storyline there about somebody, a woman who was manipulated because she drank too much. She was manipulated by her husband there. So that's a really interesting one. But and that's a horrific story, Vic. But thanks for sharing it with us, because I think it is important to see the sort of how low you can go if you're hanging out with people. If you need a drink to hang out with someone, you're going to end up with some real wrong-uns.
And sometimes it just tumbles without you even realising, like I was just travelling, then we kind of met at a bar, and then you sort of tumble into a relationship because everything's all so chaotic and you're hungover, and then suddenly you're with someone and it's almost like it feels like too late to get out. But we must say it's never too late to get out. And, you must reach out for help in those situations. And relationships need to be based on real connection, not tipsy lust that leads to toxic love, is what I've put there. So reassess and work on yourself, and hopefully everything else will fall into place, which unfortunately could mean the end to some long-term friendships and relationships. I mean, sometimes things have to go wrong before they go right. Unfortunately, that's what makes us readdress ourselves, is that this has happened, I don't want it to happen again. My drinking's gone shit, I'm going to quit. You have to reach these lows to reach the highs. I know I sound like a cliche box here, but it's true.
Well, you do, yeah. I mean, you might have to reach the lows several times, actually, like we have. I was married to a party man. My marriage was based on drinking and partying, and that is how we got on. And we did eventually, after 10 years of marriage, separate, not specifically due to the drinking, but looking back, it was definitely something that was very relevant. We were both big drinkers, probably as bad as one another with drinking. But I was the one who was questioning my drinking more and more. And like I was saying, even before I was married, when we were at that house in Byron Bay, I was saying to him, I'm not that happy with last night, how it went. I don't want to drink. I'm embarrassed. So that was becoming more and more and more, until it was kind of like he was like, yes, okay, you've got a drinking problem. And I was relieved that he had accepted it. And he did encourage and support me to go to therapy and to AA and on my attempts to stop drinking. But all the while, he was still drinking. He was still drinking, reasonably heavily. But by that point, the light was shining on me. I was the one with the problem, and I'd asked for him to recognise my problem, and he had done that. So I was really pleased. What I didn't realise was lurking in the shadows was the fact that he was still drinking, and that was a problem for me. And I have to say that I don't believe I would ever have given up unless I separated from him. It's not the reason we broke up, and we had a very amicable breakup, I will say, and we are friends now. But we worked when we were drinking, when we were partying. When things got serious in life, we didn't work. I almost feel like I changed and wanted to move on and get sober, but he was happy to carry on the way he was going. Yeah. And that's his choice and that's my choice, but they're different. And so they separated us.
Yeah. And that is a very, very common thread, isn't it, that we hear about a lot, is that there's somebody at home who is still drinking, and that is affecting your ability to quit. So I read an article in The Tempest this week, Lucy. The Tempest is a brilliant resource for anyone giving up drinking. They've got all sorts of amazing articles on there. The statement was, keep your eyes on your own paper. So essentially, it's not your job to worry about anyone else's behaviour. You just focus on your own. If not, you might find yourself obsessing over a loved one's drinking and lose track of your own purpose. This kind of outward anger will only drive a big wedge between you and your partner. Your partner will feel controlled because you'll basically be having a go at them saying, why are you still drinking when I'm not? And you will feel let down by them. I mean, that's the obvious reaction is when you're trying to give up and someone else is still drinking. The best thing you can do is, as I say, keep your eyes on your own paper. You know, keep your sobriety the number one issue for you. Like, that's what you've got to control. You can't control other people. And hopefully they will witness your positive changes and follow suit. That's all you can hope.
Well, that is all you can hope for, really. And I know that as well from being in a relationship for so long with both of us drinking. You know, I one of my suggestions here is to try and find a halfway point, i.e. no alcohol in the house for half the week and things like that.
Yeah, just try and balance it.
You can try and do that. But then even with something like that, you're telling them, look, you can't drink for half of the week because of the issue that I have and how I'm trying to make change. You can talk to them as much as you want, but unless you've got them 100% on side, and if they're already struggling, even though they may not have admitted it with their own alcohol intake, it's going to be really difficult. It's hard enough to get yourself out of that rut, but to pull someone else out with you is almost impossible. And in many cases, there are separations that happen and they have to. You have to make rules in your house around alcohol when you're not drinking. I'm sober now and we're an alcohol-free household. My kids are not allowed to bring alcohol into the house. They absolutely know it and they completely understand it. It's just the way we live now. It's part of our lives. But if you've got another adult who's got it ingrained in them, who always comes home with a crate of beer on a Friday night or whatever it is, and you're trying desperately.
It's so hard.
It is literally impossible. So what you're saying there, Vic, is really true. You just have to focus on yourself, get yourself well. It's so difficult with someone there disturbing what you're trying to do, your plan, and you know, you're trying not to drink and they come home with a drink and it's like, I don't know if I can do this. It makes it so much harder.
Yeah.
Again, bring it back to yourself. This is my journey, not theirs. I'm going to take away the bitterness that they're drinking. That's their problem.
Yeah.
If they're drinking, I'm not going to have a go at them for it, but I'm going to look inwards to what I want and I'm not going to drink. I suppose it's good training, isn't it?
Yeah. It's training for the outside world.
Yeah.
Say, look, this is my story, this is my path, and I have to tread it. And hopefully my amazing changes that I'm making will just make that person go, wow, look at what they're doing.
And we've actually got some comments from the group because you put that question on there.
I put a question because it is something that comes up a lot on my Facebook group. It's called the Drunk Mummy Sober Mummy group. If it's for women questioning their alcohol intake, so pop on there if you've got any questions. But yeah, they always are up for answering a few questions for the podcast.
Yeah, shall we read them out?
Yeah.
Am I first or are you?
You are.
I'm in red instead of blue font.
I know.
Oh, I don't know. I feel a bit uneasy now.
The devil's blood.
So the first one is, and there were heaps of them. We've just picked a few, haven't we? That's a hard one. My husband and I were each other's enablers. I quit 6 months today. Well done, whoever this is. 6 months, that's brilliant. And never asked him to do that. But living as an example, he cut back too, maybe a tenth of what he used to drink and can quite easily moderate. Lucky bastard.
Yeah.
She didn't say that, I did. Over the course of time, he's even enjoyed the zero alcohol beers. My advice would be that you need to walk your own, cliche alert, journey.
Yeah, keep your eyes on your own paper. Exactly the same.
However, be that example of what an amazing full life can look like alcohol-free, and people will want to join you. And if they don't, then kill them.
Kill your darlings, as they say, don't they? It's a famous writing term. It's like, kill your darlings.
She says, ha ha. I hope she was joking.
Extreme.
Extreme. But it does make you reassess friendships.
Yeah. The next one is, my husband and I were connected through drinking. We loved it so much. It's been hard. We completely lost each other. He was still stuck in a world that I no longer found appealing. And then in big letters, she's written communication. You've got to be honest. We are working with us. It doesn't get better overnight. It does help seeing him hungover and reminding myself why I don't like drinking. Yeah, that's actually a good thing
really
for your
helpful,
path. Yeah. It also made him look at his own drinking. It isn't easy, but you're worth the change no matter what.
Yeah. So there were loads of it's funny, whenever you put a question up on your group, it was like when we did the last podcast about COVID, we were expecting a lot of people to say how difficult COVID was. But the general theme was that COVID made them reach their rock bottom and actually change their drinking.
Yeah.
And on this thread here, where we were asking, how they've managed living in a home with other people who are drinking, people have said, look, I've done it by focusing on myself. And in fact, it's had an impact on their drinking as well.
Exactly what we were hoping for.
Yeah.
I mean, that isn't always the case, and sometimes
always,
you do
no.
have to
No.
leave. But a lot of the time, I think you might be surprised that people that are heavy drinkers, really, they're not happy.
They're not.
When it comes down to it, if you're a heavy drinker, there's probably highly likely that you are not happy in yourself. And that's something that we both know. We were drinking because really there was something in us that was making us unhappy. So that person is going to be open to change. I can assure you, they might not show it, they might not know it, but they are going to be ready at some point.
And they're not going to make that change by you asking them to. But
No.
if you can demonstrate to them that change, people look at me and they say, God, you've changed so much. You look so different. Everything's different about me now I'm sober. And it's the same with you, Vic.
Yep.
If you're a living example of that. And what a wonderful way to help a loved one who is drinking too much by just
be
doing
their
it yourself.
example. Yeah. And it's the same with kids. We say that a lot. Be an example. Don't allow them to follow suit. They're not going to follow suit. If they're going to be like you, and if you're showing, you're this guiding light that's doing something right, because that's what it is. Sobriety is doing something right.
It is, and even better, having been a big drinker and turning it around.
Yeah, you're capable of change.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to be able to show people.
Yeah, and someone else has put move out, try a new life. I agree with that one as well.
Yeah. Remember, we're all completely unique. All our situations are unique. So the advice that we're offering and the things that we're talking about here are things that have happened to us, and the things that have worked for us. So yes, we're not telling people that if your husband's heavy drinker, you should move out and divorce him.
Get counselling probably would be a good idea.
Yeah, get some support.
Why you shouldn't fear making big changes to the people in your world and the end result it will have. Here we go.
Ending on a high, as usual.
Yeah, so what we're trying to say is exactly what we're talking about, why you shouldn't fear being sober. I mean, I know there's that word now, I can't remember what it was, the fear of sobriety that we talked about last week. It's not necrophilia, is it? That's when you see with dead people.
It's definitely not that.
We've probably got a few of those listening though.
We've got all sorts listening in. And that's all right, we like it.
Yeah, we don't mind. Okay. If it's not working, change it. As I said, get a marriage counsellor. You don't have to give up on people, but you do have to clear your path. I changed and people respected my honesty and openness. Honesty was my weapon of choice. And I'm now all guns blazing in sobriety. So just being honest about your drinking is a way to tell people what you're doing and what they should expect so they're not disappointed.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And one of the things about becoming sober is making really, really massive changes to your life.
Yeah, and being proud of those changes as well. Be the one forging forward.
And many of those changes are going to be around the people in your world. And it might seem madness to you at the moment if you're listening and thinking, oh my God, my best mate who I've known forever is a really big drinker. How am I going to work through this with her? She's the person I always go out with. She's the person I turn to. But you do need to address it with the people who are close to you. Yeah. And that might mean you lose them from your world, even just temporarily. And it might seem like such a massive change, but that's what sobriety is. It's about making heaps of massive changes.
The one thing that people say to me often is I've given up drinking, I've done 2 weeks, I've done a month, but I've got this big event coming up in 2 weeks and I'm dreading it. I mean, I used to dread events because I knew I'd be the drunkest person there. But now I look forward to everything because I know that I'm just going to leave early and be a smug, sober bastard sitting in the corner with my lemonade. But, that you've got to be proud of it and you've got to stay with that. You've got to stay with that feeling in your heart, and leave everything else behind, because you can go into that situation and you can do it. And the only reason you'd want to drink in that situation is to appease everybody that's going to be there. Yeah. And that's not a good enough reason anymore, is it?
No, it's not
a good enough reason to...
And all that becomes clear when you stop drinking, but it's a bit difficult. It's a chicken and the egg, because you need to get sober, really, to realise that. Yeah. But when you think of making the changes to people in your world, you have to remember that you might have to say goodbye to a few old friends.
Yeah.
But you're going to create new friends. I mean, we wouldn't be sitting here doing this podcast if we weren't both sober.
No.
I mean, I don't believe that you and I, Vic, would be as close of friends as we are if I was still drinking.
No, I wouldn't have been friends with you because I would find it too triggering and I'd be like, no, that's not working for me.
Yeah.
I know what works now and I know what doesn't. So I wouldn't bring people into my life that I felt were having, although I am available to help people in those situations, but real true friendships, I'm not sure I could allow that in.
Yeah, but when you say goodbye to old friends, you are going to find new friends, and the friends that work for you in your sober world. And what you'll notice is that the old friends, the ones that you've lost contact with, or you just speak to once a year, perhaps, or you just like their posts on Facebook. Those people, they did serve a wonderful purpose in your world, and it's not putting down that friendship in any way. It was a time thing, but you notice that you've got nothing in common with them anymore.
Yeah.
So why would you keep up such a difficult relationship when one of you is drinking and one of you is sober?
Yeah.
So it's about accepting that you are going to lose some people in your world, but you're also going to open lots of new doors to new people who support your new massive changing lifestyle.
Healthier relationships probably, and people that respect your choices. Because if people don't respect your choices, that's up to them. They're the one that's ditching the friendship. It's not you. They're ditching the friendship by not respecting your choice to give up drinking.
Yeah, they might see it the other way around. If you're letting down the friendship because you're the one who's changing. They're not doing anything. They're remaining the same.
They are remaining the same.
But that's the same with a lot of long-term marriages or just long-term relationships. The reason that they do break up and you go your separate ways is because you change. And that's
Somebody
what humans
evolves.
do.
Yeah, people evolve.
We do. You could be exactly the same, perfect for each other for like 10 years. And then you both start to move in different directions. Why stay with that person if it's not working and you've just evolved and changed naturally and you don't work together anymore? Another thing that I put here, why you shouldn't fear making big changes to the people in your world, is because socialising is a lot cheaper when you're sober and you're going out with another sober person, and it involves a lot more cake.
Yeah, it's true.
And tea. I've become a tea connoisseur.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, got to have your, what's my one I like?
Oh, what's that?
Celestial.
Yes.
Yes.
I've got a new kitchen, and Vic came around the other day to take photos of my daughter's graduation because she's really shit hot with her iPhone camera, aren't you? She takes brilliant photos. So she very kindly came round to take some photos. I've got a new kitchen, and I've got a pull-out drawer, which is just full of different varieties of tea. She was very, very impressed.
I do like a nice tea drawer.
Oh, yes. It's got probably got
I've gone from bog lids to tea drawers. Nice shiny bog lid I used to like.
How things change.
How things change. Right, we've got some tips and takeaway for you guys.
Okay. So if, like Vic and I, you've been drinking heavily for many years, you will likely have a wild, booze-soaked friendship circle with a million hilarious drunken tales to tell. Of course, this was fun while it lasted, but it won't help your sober mission. Accept that change is needed, and it starts with the people around you, the ones that you surround yourself with.
We've mentioned some red flags that suggest your mates are not really vibing the new sober you. Open your eyes and recognise them. Even if this person happens to be your very best mate who you've known forever, if they are disrupting your sober dream, you need to rework the friendship somehow.
Yeah, and I like that rework. It's not about chucking out old mates, is it? You don't want to be doing that. It's about changing it, reworking it.
Yeah.
And yes, we are like a broken record, but be proud of your sobriety and talk about it openly. If an unsupportive drinking friend senses some embarrassment or weakness, they may use it to twist your arm and, heaven forbid, suggest you have just one glass.
Oh, that old chestnut.
No such thing, is there?
No such thing. Remember that people have their own reasons not to support your sobriety. It might be that they are not ready to change because they know and love the drinking version of you. Or maybe your choices are forcing them to confront their own drinking issues, which happens a lot. Whatever their reasons, try to respect and understand them in the hope that they will respect and understand your pursuit for sobriety.
Yeah, respect, hugely important.
Yeah.
Changing friends doesn't mean you have to write a Dear John letter and literally dump all your mates. Tell them how you feel and put some distance between yourself and them. Then see what happens. They might disappear from your life or reach out to support you. Both Vic and I have been pleasantly surprised by the amount of support that even our biggest drinking mates have given us.
If you live with a family member who drinks and isn't supportive of you giving up, all is not lost. Try talking to them, find some middle ground, or even get them involved in a therapy session with you. If they love you, as I'm sure they do, they will come round, but they may need to sort through some of their own stuff first.
We've said it before and we'll say it again. Sobriety is not your old life without the booze. It is a completely different life. In knowing this, think about whether you need to rehaul your friendship groups and make sure your nearest and dearest are on side to support, encourage and cheer on the new sober you.
And last but not least, just remember who you're doing this for first and foremost. It's for you. Lovely, perfectly imperfect you. It's time to give up worrying what others think and how they will handle your changes. That's their own complicated story. Just do what's right for you, and the rest will become clear further down the zigzaggy sobriety highway.
Yeah,
I've got a little quote here.
Go for it.
If you design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. And guess what? They have planned for you. Not much.
Very, very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why would you want to be part of someone else's plan?
Also, you can carry on sitting on the sofa every Friday night and downing 20 beers while you watch telly. That is your choice to carry on. Again, it's about choice again. So
It's
you
about
do
looking,
have the
looking
choice.
inward rather
looking
than
inward
looking
at
outward.
yourself and whether you choose to do that with that person or not. I watched a brilliant series this week, which I really wanted to recommend, Lucy. It was called In My Skin. It's on Stan. It was about mental health and a young girl whose mum has bipolar and whose father is an alcoholic. And it was all about what we're talking about today. She spends her life pretending to be happy when she's got all this stuff going on at home, and she's pretending to all her friends that everything's okay, and she sort of forgets about her own mental health, which results in her being unwell as well. It's really triggery for some because there's a lot of drinking and a lot of partying going on, but the story and the theme of it is really relevant to what we're talking about today. So yeah, check that out, guys. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I haven't got Stan. You keep telling me about things on Stan. I think
there's so
just
many
to
good
Yeah.
recovery
And
TV.
I mean, that does sound really good. It'd be a massive trigger for me. I'm really struggling with the things I watch on TV at the moment. It's on Netflix and things. I literally have to turn them off because they trigger me because there's people with hangovers or drinking.
Yeah.
So then, like when I'm feeling like I can feel my heart rate going up and I get this sort of pit of anxiety in my stomach just through something I'm watching on TV. So what I do now is if I'm feeling like that, I switch over to gardening in Australia.
Oh, good
and
idea.
I find that calms me down.
Yeah.
And then I might be able to go back and watch. This is the truth. I
Yeah.
can then go back and watch something, but I can only watch it for about 20 minutes because there's people taking drugs or drinking heavily.
So you sort of level out the playing
Yeah.
field by then going and watching something a bit more
bit
peaceful.
calming, yeah. But that's actually got worse
Okay,
in my
yeah.
sobriety,
Isn't that
those
funny?
triggers.
Yeah,
So
those
triggers,
triggers.
yeah, they do keep coming. We've talked about triggers, so if anyone is struggling with theirs,
Yeah.
head back and have a listen to our other podcast all about it.
I was thinking about triggers actually the other day. It's funny you mentioned that. I think in sobriety, everyone's like, when are the triggers going to go? When are they going to go? And actually, I don't think they ever go. I think it's about learning to sit with them and learning to live with triggers.
Maybe they're the reminders that we need
They're
of
the
how
reminders.
bad we were.
Exactly. And that's what you need.
Yeah.
I don't need gallstones though, Lucy. I found out this week I've got a gallstone.
Oh, really?
What is wrong
Is
with
that
me?
not an old woman's disease?
I know, exactly. That's what I'm concerned about. I don't know if anyone wants to email me stuff about gallstones.
Have they got to take it out?
I don't know. I've got to find out what's going on with it.
Oh, no doubt I'll get all the
I'm going to
details.
get an episode.
I expect that the listeners can't wait for the next bit of news
we've already
about
had- we
Vic's gallstone.
We already had wart news, didn't we?
We had wart news. That was way back.
I'm waiting for
Yeah.
you to get some sort of infectious skin fungus so that I can be one up.
Well, I do.
with
I do have a bit of eczema, if that
Oh,
helps.
excellent. Okay. So we can have gallstone gossip section of the website, bloating bulletins, and maybe a hemorrhoid hotline if anyone wants to call in and tell us about their hemorrhoids.
This doesn't make us sound like we're very healthy, sober people.
Well, no, sometimes, you just have weeks where you feel like you're falling apart.
Yeah,
I had one of those weeks this week.
You've been poorly, haven't you?
I've been poorly. I've had a cough. So
I'm going to congratulate you for getting through this whole
I know.
podcast without coughing.
I've got a tea in front of me and a coconut water, and I think I coughed once, so I apologise, everyone. I hope you don't catch my horrible disease, and give me a call about your hemorrhoids anytime.
Thanks, Vic.
Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to the Sober Awkward podcast.
If alcohol is affecting your life in a negative way, if you're struggling to moderate or your hangovers are causing anxiety, it might be time to reach out for help. Contact your local doctor, a therapist, or connect with your local AA or sobriety group. Vic's got one.
Yes, go onto Facebook and just search Drunk Mummy, Sober Mummy, the group. Lucy and I both agree that even though this journey can be awkward, it's definitely worth it. And if we can do it, you can too.
For more support on sobriety, head to Vic's website, drunkmummysobermummy.com.
And Lucy runs an online space to support and inspire single mums. Find out more at beanstalkmums.com.au. Finally, if you've enjoyed the Sober Awkward podcast, don't forget to follow, subscribe, review, and share it with your mates.
Don't make it sound like they have to, though.
No, they do have to. I'm not doing all this for nothing, Lucy. No.
On Florida's Space Coast, we think you can have the best of both worlds. Kind of like right now. Driving, at your desk, maybe at the gym, but you're also grooving to some music. Visit us and you'll go to the beach and see a rocket launch. Or go kayaking and manatee spotting. It's all waiting for you on the only beach that doubles as a launch pad. Plan your adventure today at visitspacecoast.com.